Learning objectives. After reading this document, the reader should be able to know the history of Shintoism and its influences on modern Japan, Shintoism and its branches, Shintoism and how it relates to modern Japan activities.
History. First shrines appear in Japan in 478 AD. Buddhism and Shintoism grow together in 538 AD to 1850, with their closely linked start in Japan's history. Shintoism and Buddhism continue to grow in their influence over the country together, with many of their shrines built in the same precincts and families visiting both places of worship for different purposes. Buddhism arrived in Japan in 538 AD. Indigenous people of Japan formalized their spiritual practices into the Shinto faith to distinguish themselves from Buddhism. First shrine to Amaterasu is built at Ise in Japan in 625 AD. Remains one of the foremost Shinto holy places and thought to house the kami of the imperial family. Shintoism supports up to 3,000 plus shrines for state use in 900 AD to 1000 AD. Emergence of syncretic sects of Shintoism and Buddhism in the year 1100 and 1200. Examples include the Ryobo Shinto and the Sano Shinto schools, with the most common schools of Buddhist Shinto holding its popularity for the next few centuries. Meiji Restoration and Modernization of Japan in 1868. Under Emperor Meiji, plans to modernize the country and improve nationalism, Shintoism is required to separate itself from Buddhism and made the state religion. Ministry of Divinities is made in Japan in 1873. This department is made to enforce state Shinto and aid the government in overseeing the clergy and education system of the nation. Meiji Shrine is built for Emperor and his wife in 1915. During the period of Meiji Shrine is built for Emperor and his wife in 1915. During the period of state Shinto, this shrine occupied the highest rank of government-supported holy sites and is believed to house the kami of the late emperor and his wife who are buried there. End of World War II in 1945. With the embarrassment of defeat in World War II, state Shinto comes to an end and Shintoism temporarily banned since it is associated with the militarism and nationalism that brought about the war. Shintoism, often known as Shinto, is a Japanese ethnic religion acknowledged as the country's national religion. Shinto, which means the path of the gods, comes from the 7th century CE. Shintoism has no acknowledged founder, no official sacred writings, and no organized dogma. Shinto derives from an indigenous, animistic, and community-based folk religion in Japan that stresses nature worship and reverence for spirits that live in nature. These nature spirits are known as gods or kami, and they may be found everywhere in nature, in mountains, trees, and rivers, and are manifested by natural occurrences like rain, wind, and storm. Shinto recognizes the worship of deified ancestors, the spirits of departed monarchs, saints, and heroes in addition to the worship of the kami. Kami are more like spirits, creatures defined by a divine essence or aura. Kami are more like spirits, creatures defined by a divine essence or aura. Periods of Shinto history. One of the standard classifications of Shinto history reduces it into four crucial periods. Before the arrival of Buddhism in Japan, Shinto and Buddhism together in Japan, the Meiji reinterpretation of Shinto in the 19th century, Shinto after the World War II, Shinto's chain of continuity, Shinto as an institution. Before the arrival of Buddhism, there was no organized Shinto religion during this period, although several local cults are now combined under the name Shinto. The original inhabitants of Japan, like many prehistoric people, were most likely animists, devoted to the spirits of nature. These were the kami found in plants and animals, mountains and seas, storms and earthquakes, sand, and all significant natural events in their case. The early Japanese devised rituals and myths that allowed them to make sense of their environment by building a spiritual and cultural world that gave them historical roots and a way of appearing to take control of their life in what would have otherwise been a terrifying and perplexing terrain. These religions were highly localized and did not form a single faith, nor were they perceived as a single religion. The realms of earth and the supernatural were so completely intertwined into the early Japanese worldview that what modern people regard as faith was seen as just another aspect of the natural world, albeit a huge and powerful portion. The Meiji reinterpretation of Shinto. The Meiji Restoration in 1868 brought a sudden change in the religious climate of Japan. The goal was to establish a holy foundation and religious reason for the new Japan and its national ethos, as well as to sustain the central administrative structure. Shinto was restructured, fully isolated from Buddhism, and integrated into the governmental administration framework. Shinto became Japan's official state religion, and numerous shrines were funded by the government. This financial assistance, however, was short-lived, and by the 1890s, Shinto's non-religious period. Throughout this time, Shinto has been labeled as non-religious. Traditional historians believe that this was done to avoid any conflict between the Japanese state's imposition of Shinto and the Japanese constitution's protections for religious freedom. It was more complex than Shinto and was intricately related to the imperial way and Japan's underlying ethical and social code. Shinto was considered so superior to other faiths, all of which were founded by humans, that it was labeled as non-religious. Shinto after World War II. As part of Japan's Allied reformation, the emperor lost his exalted position in 1946, and Shinto was abolished. They were not built on the erroneous belief that the emperor is divine and that the Japanese are superior to other races and destined to rule the globe. Despite its lack of official status, Shinto continues to play an important role in Japanese, especially in spirituality and daily life. And despite the non-divine status of the emperor, extensive religious rituals and mysticism still surround many imperial festivities. Shinto's chain of continuity. Although no one institution unites ancient and contemporary Shinto, modern Shinto's shrine architecture and ceremonies are sufficiently similar to those of ancient Shinto that a clear chain of identification can be constructed. Shinto has unquestionably played a significant influence in Japanese history in this regard. Shinto as an institution. Attempts have been attempted, with varying degrees of success, throughout Japanese history to impose a centralized and imperial Shinto on numerous local shrine cults. Local varieties were frequently permitted to develop within communities as a result of the centralizations, and this freedom may have helped the survival of Shinto in diverse Japanese villages.
Shintoism. Shintoism, usually known as Shinto, is a Japanese ethnic religion and the country's official religion. Shinto is a Japanese folk religion that stresses the worship of nature and the spirits that exist in nature. It derives from an indigenous, animistic, and community-based folk religion. Shinto celebration and practices. Shinto ceremonies and beliefs are not enshrined in a codified ideology. Many of these ideas are based on creation tales from the Shinto chronicles, as well as oral literature and folklore. In Shinto, rituals are extremely important because they convey Shinto's core beliefs, notably the adoration of kami, nature, and departed ancestors. Matsuri refers to any occasion for giving gratitude and praise to a kami at a shrine, in addition to ritual worship at a shrine. As a result, festivals and festives are fundamental components of Shintoism and Japanese culture. From January 1 to 3, the Shinto New Year is observed. New Year's Day is the most important holiday in Japan since it represents a start of a new year. Japanese observed the New Year by going to shrines to pray to their gods and ancestors, purify themselves spiritually, and ask for favors for the next year. The Shinto New Year is one of the several festivals observed by Shinto worshippers, including the Obon Festival, also known as Lantern Festival, Adults' Day, and the Emperor's Birthday. Shinto beliefs. The kami is Shinto's central belief. Kami can refer to a variety of things including the source of life and existence, natural elements or energies, nature spirits, and departed spirits. The Shinto belief that nature and all life are holy and that man must live in peace with both nature and the spiritual realm is influenced by the notion of kami, and also humanity is naturally good, according to Shintoism, and doing wrong or hurtful acts goes against man's natural nature. Sincerity is seen as the method or will of the kami, and people who follow it will naturally behave and think in a good and moral manner. Shinto also believes that all life is holy and that the sacredness of human life stems from the kami's divine essence. The worship of countless deities and most prominent of whom is the sun goddess Amaterasu is another important part of the Shinto religion. Shinto also holds the Japanese monarch and his family in high regard, since they are regarded to be divine.
Shintoism is primarily found in Japan, where there are around 100,000 public shrines, although practitioners are also found abroad. Numerically, it is Japan's largest religion, the second being Buddhism. Most of the country's population takes part in both Shinto and Buddhism activities, especially festivals, reflecting common view in Japanese culture that the beliefs, practices of different religions need not to be exclusive. Aspects of Shinto have also been incorporated into various Japanese new religious movements. The introduction of Buddhism to Japan did not cause the abandonment of Shinto. Instead, the pantheons of both religions were expanded so that Buddhist figures adopted complementary Shinto identities, and Shinto-kami were taught to strive the Buddhist enlightenment. In this way, new converts to Buddhism were not obliged to abandon their traditional beliefs, and Buddhism was able to appeal to a wide range of people. This just means that even though you are practicing Buddhism, you no longer need to forget about Shinto and can practice it. As previously noted, the religious setting of Japan, as well as how Japan operates as a syncretic religious system, and the contrast between religion and belief, we can observe how historical beliefs are influencing Japan culture. Traditional ideas passed down via Buddhism and Shintoism are preventing Japan from attaining societal development. Nonetheless, Shintoism continues to have an effect on the lives of modern Japanese people. The discussion focuses on occupational ostracism and the rejection of Western medicine in favor of spiritual healing. Religious background should be made more obvious so that general public does not mindlessly participate in social, restrictive, or suppressive practices.
Worshipping Shinto belief at a distance. Shinto is the center of Japanese culture, influencing everything from family, literature, and politics to art, sports, and ethics. Shinto is derived from the Chinese character Shin divided being a Tao, the way, which approximately transfer as a way. Shinto is a religion associated with Japan. According to SAS blog 2019, is the Shinto they are religion at all given. The ritual takes precede of belief. Shinto is the center of Japanese culture, influencing everything from family, literature, and politics to art, sports, and ethics. Shinto is derived from the Chinese character Shin divide being a Tao, the way, which approximate transferly as way of the spirit. Most Shinto worship practice a similar an act of political prayer. An offering and prayer are among of them. All totemism cult, which contain the certain fetters of Shinto, date from the second half of the 16th century. The term Shinto was the first used in the second half of the century. Shinto is the indigenous faith of Japan and became the state religion of Japan from the late 19th century. Until 1945, when it's disclaimed as the state religion by the directive of the establishment of the state Shinto, the town of Noza is the Nagonan prefect of the house and the fame and fire festival every year in the January 15. Thousands of people assemble the colorful ceremony of the land and sack-filled garments to celebrate and pray for the well-being of the local community. On the other hand, Shinto beliefs are also worshipped in the countries, though there are not as many as their other prominent religion. Shinto beliefs are still practiced in the foreign countries according to organized 2002 Global Shinto Practitioners and connected through online Shinto communities. Negotiate answer to the problem of globalization in everyday life thought, ritual practice, and the Kamidana. Online Shinto communities affirm importance of the connection between the Shinto ritual and the sacrifice landscape. Global Shinto practitioners collective negotiation of localization process on the whole confirm that kami are present one's locality and the loyalty matter of them. Thus and locality must matter to those who venerate them. Conversely become the kami value sincerity, that which matter personal to the Shinto practitioner also matter to them, to the kami.
Shintoism and politics in Japan. Buddhism was introduced into Japanese religious life in the 6th century, and Buddhism and Shinto began to coexist in the Japanese government. However, Buddhist influence in government grew stronger over the next few centuries. Japanese society espoused its central philosophy as a result of the political decision to adopt Shintoism as its national level religion. Shintoism and politics in Japan. Buddhism was introduced into Japanese religious life in the 6th century, and Buddhism and Shinto began to coexist in the Japanese government. To ensure that the kami looked after Japan and its people, the emperor and his court had to perform religious ceremonies. A liturgical calendar for the court was created. Buddhist influence in government grew stronger over the next few centuries. As a reaction to the outside threat posed by Christian missionaries, the 17th century was dominated by state-imposed Buddhism, with many Shinto elements. Japanese society espoused its Shinto philosophy as a result of the political decision to adopt Shintoism as its national-level religion. Recent research, however, has revealed that in modern Japanese history, the native religion is also known for its role in the formation of Japanese nationalism. This legacy has also been linked to ultra-negative nationalism's connotations, Jensen and Bloch, 2013. From that point forward, Japanese political, social, military, and religious institutions centered themselves on the emperor who had now become an icon of all that was good, pure, and holy, the very essence and spirit of Japan. In Japanese schools, these ideas were also heavily promoted. The defeat of Japan at the end of World War II resulted in a significant shift in Shinto doctrine as the emperor renounced his divinity and lost control of the Japanese government. As her direct descendant, the emperor was given the divine right to rule not only Japan, but the entire world. Furthermore, it became official doctrine that the Japanese were superior to all other races because they were descended from the gods. Shintoism, on the other hand, contribute power to Japan's state by elevating the emperor above all others.
Contemporary social changes and Shinto tradition. Shintoism takes pride in a straightforward, autonomous perspective of the universe rather than a complex and intricate structure. The absence of scripture, ethical, moral laws, and doctrines allow the individual to not be crowded with their interpretations rather than knowledge, expectations, and rules. Because Shinto is an immanent religion, people have a close connection to the world around them. The acceptance of other religions and broad religious openness provide opportunities for their self-discovery. Living their life to the fullest and performing virtuous deeds are vital characteristics of a Shinto believer. We can see from these notions that the human need for meaning is found by living life simply, being a part of and caring for the earth, being positive and freely welcoming of others, and fulfilling your definition of full potential as a decent person by worshipping and valuing kami. As time passes, society changes together with the Shinto shrines where most of the social gatherings happen. For instances, the Fuji Shijen Shrine. As is well known, there are in the Shinto tradition many mountains regarded as Shintaizan or kami-embodying mountains. A classical example of such a mountain is Mount Fuji. To clarify this fact and obtain legal support for it, Fuji Senjen sought a court decision, but the court refused to consider the matter, and in 1954, Mount Fuji became national government property. 3 years later, it became public knowledge that there was a plan to construct a cable car line on the Yamanashi prefecture side of the mountain, and in 1959, a request to permit construction was resubmitted to the government. Observing this development, the shrine again took the matter to court. In 1962, it was finally decided that the top 20% of Mount Fuji belongs to the shrine. Another example of this kind of change is the festival held in Kanda Shrine. Kanda Shrine is located in downtown Tokyo, and its festival has been known since the Tokugawa period as one of the 3 greatest Tokyo festivals. These festivals, however, was discontinued for several years beginning in 1945. People sought to revive it from about 1952, but the police, for traffic control reasons, hedged it with regulations. To some extent, this reflects the tendency to develop a festival that will attract sightseers, to be sure, but when the Kanda festival is compared with others, this factor becomes practically negligible. It seems reasonable to suggest, therefore, that the urbanization process may tend to not only toward an all-embracing secularization, but also, and at the same time, toward a situation in which people seek to recover their traditional value orientation. Members of urbanized societies seek, in other words, to revitalize their humanity.
Shintoism's perspective on abortion in Japan. Japan may be the world's richest and technologically sophisticated country, but it is based on an outmoded birth control system that requires women to rely primarily on abortion in a society that condemns it. NHS 2022 defines abortion as a technique to terminate a pregnancy. It is also referred to as pregnancy termination. The pregnancy is terminated either by medical or surgical treatment. While in Shinto beliefs, the benefits of living individuals and the larger community, Ginseryako, is seen as the most important. However, competing values and notions coexist inside it. Under this belief system, the moral status of an embryo, pregnancy, or birth is unknown. That unrelated creatures are avoided since they are regarded to be a source of kigare, which means defilement, uncleanness, and impurity. As also stated by Asai et al. 2021, Shinto has a significant influence on how Japanese society responds to bioethical issues such as abortion. According to Shinto beliefs, killing a fetus in the uterus is socially permissible since it prioritizes the survival and well-being of present community members, such as a pregnant woman, her family, other blood relatives, and third parties. Although there is a strong sense of impurity associated with a human death, the death of a fetus may be seen differently than that of a contemporary community member. This concludes that even though undergoing an abortion is a woman's choice, people who are Shintoists that strongly believe in the belief of children are gifts from Kami until the age of 7 will criticize and, if possible, shame women who go for an abortion, thus giving Shintoism a way to influence this topic.
Marks of Shintoism in today's tourism in Japan. Shinto shrines in Japan are famous pilgrimage destinations not only for religious reasons, but also for their cultural significance, both domestically and internationally. Shinto shrines are popular tourist destination in Japan through tourism, not just the more well-known shrines, but even smaller, more local shrines have gained popularity. Traveling to religious places is not a new phenomenon, as Japan has a long-lasting tradition of pilgrimage. However, the role of the shape of religion and travel alter as society changes. Some forms of religious tourism, such as Hasamode, or the first visit to a shrine after the New Year, and pilgrimage tourism, such as Shikoku Island bus tours, were born as a result of tourism industry engagement and the development of the transportation networks. Shinto shrines are now often visited as a result of pictures provided by the media. Visiting shrines has become a popular pastime in the 2010s because of the nationwide power sport, the spot boom, and the collecting of seal stamps. Additionally, since shrines are often featured in popular culture, many fans want to visit places related to their favorite movie or games. That's why the Japanese word of pilgrimage, Shichi Junri, has been giving new connotations in anime and games. Not just in religion, it can be therefore be said that the shrines have become tourist attraction for the people with different motivation which combine secular and religious. In recent years, the study of religion and tourism as well as modern pilgrimage has become a growing field worldwide. And also in Japan, where touristic use of religious practices and places has been discussed by scholars of religious study and tourism studies since the 2010s. Scholars of religious studies have taken up the topic of tourism, not only as proof of the secularization of religious tradition, but as a legitimate object of research that reflects the state of modern religion. In previous studies, tourism in religious places has been described as the consumption of representations, where religious places and practices are given new value and meaning, as something worth visiting not just in the religious sense. In particular, mass media has a great influence on the process of recontextualizing traditional religious places and emphasizing their spiritual side. making them easier to travelers and itineraries. Using various strategies such as branding and collaborating with well-known characters and celebrities, religious organizations in contemporary Japan are using reshaping and updating their religious sites and tradition to compete in secularized world. It can even be argued the market that engagement is crucial for the continuation of religious practices such as pilgrimage. Moreover, the consumption of religion outside of its conventional context has been seen to reflect the emergence of a new spiritual market, where the line between the religious and the secular is fluid, when the spiritual market, not just religious institutions, but also actors from the cultural industry, including tourism, provide products such as religious tourism to satisfy the consumer spiritual. The diversification of sacred places has also been in place within a wider process of sacralization, in which the reinvasion of shrines as power spots is not driven by religious institutions themselves, but rather by outside actors. Attempts to be privatized Shinto and reinterpret and reconfigure beliefs, rituals, and institutions traditionally labeled as religion, as Japanese traditional culture and heritage are matched by this movement. On the other hand, when it comes to employing religion as a tourism resource, however, the involvement of outside players has been questioned because the government is not legally permitted to promote religious rituals. The culture aspect of the Gyun Matsuri in Kyoto has been stressed in advertising materials as a strategic ploy to achieve UNESCO accreditation. In addition, discusses how the Namihei tradition of Akita Prefecture has been stripped of its religious characteristic when being rebanded of incredible cultural heritage. However, in the tourism-oriented Namihei Sido Matsuri, the religious dimension of the practice have been highlighted. Even more, the actual New Year's Eve ritual of the locals argues that when designated as heritage, the concept of value is brought to religion, as the meaning of religious places, things, and practices are evaluated from the outside. Certain religious practices are included, whereas the others are excluded, and criteria for so-called desirable and undesirable faiths are created. As a result, depending on the content and people involved, the same tradition is treated, practiced, and employed differently.
Conclusion. Overall, Shintoism continues to have a strong influence in Japan today, influencing the political status of the royalties, their economy and tourism, and their society, with the majority of their citizens still participating in Shinto rituals and festivals.
Conclusion. Overall, Shintoism continues to have a strong influence in Japan today, influencing the political status of the royalties and the economy and tourism, and their society, with the majority of their citizens still participating in Shinto ritual and festival. Many Shinto devotees, on other hand, and Buddhism, this make estimating the number of Shinto believers in the country difficult. According to some estimate, Japanese Shintos account for about 40% of the population. Two Shintos incorporated some Taoism, Confucian, and Buddhism, teaching the practice and fundamental belief. Teachings and ritual have remained understood over time. Shinto has shrine in many countries, including the United States, Brazil, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the Netherlands, and it's considered to be on its way to becoming a global religion, particularly when the construction of Shinto belief overseas.